Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor, along with Rick Brewing. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Maislin. We've got some Bengals minicamp stuff to get to, the Shemar Stewart situation, probably a little bit of Reds. We may squeeze in some college basketball. And, of course, the part of the podcast, you can ask me a question on any topic. Go to the X-verse, hit up the hashtag AskSkinnyAnything. Rick, I think we've had back-to-back days with no rain. It's a refreshing change here in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's been some nice weather. The pools are open. I actually got the opportunity to get in a hot tub yesterday to try to fix this back thing I'm working on. So life is good in the Queen City, but not if you are at Bengals OTAs or if you're a rookie lineman at Bengals OTAs. Shemar Stewart has left mandatory minicamp, Skinny. He was attending team activities, but has now decided to leave due to the standoff over his contract. He held court with the local media after OTAs earlier this week. Take us through that. What was that like when he was talking to you media types, and did you foresee that he might be on his way out here?
So it was interesting. So I talked to him by myself for about 2 minutes before the horde came out of the Joe Burrow press conference. I had a couple guys I wanted to talk to, and Shemar really wasn't one of them at the moment. But I'm like, I'm gonna try to break the ice here and talk to him about the contract stuff. So I walked up and I said, Shemar, you got a minute? He goes, depends on what you want to talk about. I said, well, you kind of know what I'm going to talk about. So I asked him. He was kind of icy, and then he kind of warmed up, and he finally got to a point where he said, I don't understand. This whole thing is just stupid. And so I said, will you come to training camp and participate without a contract? He goes, nah, I'm not going to talk about that. And he got up and left. I thought, okay, he's done. Like I pushed him as far as I could push him, and he's done. So I go to talk to another player, come back. Everybody comes in from the Burrow press conference, and I look over, and Shemar had just sat down. And Kelsey Conway from the Enquirer walked up to him, and the horde kind of followed. And he kind of held court for about another 3 to 5 minutes. And I think it got to the point where maybe after talking to me, he realized, you know what, I'm laying all this out for everybody. And I think he really came back intentionally to try to really voice his frustration. Now, the weird part to today, and we're doing this on Thursday after the last minicamp practice, so they're on their break now for the next 5 weeks until training camp, was apparently his agent told a reporter that he didn't want to be a distraction. That's why he's left. Well, dude, you made it a distraction by leaving. It became worse by leaving, in my opinion. He said his piece on Tuesday. We all reported it. And at that point, it's just a standoff. But when you opt to leave, that is a distraction.
Yeah, and his agent is a bit of a, I don't know if you want to call him goof or you want to call him controversial or whatever, but he wants to be in the muck. He wants to be slinging and get his name out there, clearly based on his actions and the way he's handled this so far. So I don't believe his agent at all with anything he's saying about that. He wants more attention. He's not trying to limit distractions.
Who do you think told Adam Schefter this morning that he had left camp?
Exactly. So that's BS. But that being said,
and last I checked, I know Adam Schefter probably only has like 102 followers on X. So his voice isn't very. Seriously, dude, you didn't want to be a distraction. You made it one.
Yeah, you do want to be a distraction. But that being said, again, we've talked about this multiple times. I find it very hard to take issue with Shemar Stewart's side on this.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I don't know. Maybe you feel like he should stay at mandatory minicamp. He should be at the team activities. That's fair. But I do, to his point, like at a certain point in these negotiations and the standoff process, it's like, do you guys actually care about winning football games, or do you just care about winning an argument here? And you feel like maybe you have to put a little more pressure and make them take it a little more seriously. I don't think it's like him being a diva or him being dramatic situation. I think he's in the right, and I think he's probably doing what he feels like he needs to do.
Yeah, I just don't understand what today was all about, though. I really don't. You've been the good soldier to this point. Stay that way. Hopefully something gets done between now and camp. If it doesn't, you want to dig your heels in again then. The only thing this does is make the family want to dig their heels in even more on this issue.
Well, there was the report out there that he might be trying to find a way out and like foregoing this year or something. Do you think there's any legitimacy to that now that he's gone this far to leave camp?
Absolutely. If he's not going to blink it out, and really this isn't, again, I just want to make it clear. He knows what money he's going to make. The Bengals know what money they have to pay. That part's right. Not even negotiable. It's $18.8 million. So it's about some language in the contract that they don't feel comfortable with, and the family doesn't feel like it wants to back off of. So where are we at? This isn't about the Trey Hendrickson he needs to come down on his offer. They need to come up a little bit on that. No, this is about just some wording in a contract.
Skinny, the way I understand, and again, it comes down to what's guaranteed is the way I understand it.
No, the whole contract, rookie contract is going to be fully guaranteed. It's a matter of when do you get those guarantees. And the Bengals are trying to give themselves a little bit of wiggle room in case, let's just say, he gets suspended, that they can get out from some of those guarantees.
Right. So it basically comes down to it getting guaranteed. And as I understand it, there are other NFL teams who have started putting this language in contracts. The Bengals aren't the first to try to do this.
That is correct.
But
yes. I found that out actually in the last day or two. That is right.
But this is also the first time that the Bengals have tried to put this wording into a rookie deal. So
they want the exact wording Amarius Mims had last year. And literally that, and I don't know why that's so difficult. I mean, yeah, I guess if other teams are starting to put some language in, but the problem with the Bengals is they simply, and they've earned this, they don't get the benefit of the doubt on this stuff. They just don't.
Right. And there is a ripping the Band-Aid point for a decision like this, right? If you're going to change the wording in your contract, someone's going to have to be the first guy, and you're going to have to stick to your guns at some point. The thing I come back to with the Bengals is this the time to do it with a guy who you have deemed clearly very important based on the way that you've handled the offseason and based on the fact that Trey Hendrickson is still threatening to hold out. Shemar Stewart is clearly a very important piece of this roster right now, and you are deciding to quabble over something very small, a negotiation thing that you've always done previously. So this would be the first time that you would be getting your way in this situation. Why is this the moment to do that? I just don't understand it.
Right. In the leverage for Shemar Stewart at the moment is Trey Hendrickson is balking at playing, right? And so you feel like you have a little bit more importance and that you want it done your way. The Bengals, the leverage may come back to the Bengals side of this argument. If let's just say they do come to terms with Trey and Trey signs and they look at Shemar and go, you don't want to sign, you don't have to sign. It's up to, we got our guy back and we'll figure out the rest. I don't think it's a great way to operate, but I do think these two are a little bit intertwined at the moment.
It definitely seems that way. What is the next step? Is it just one side caves or do you think there's any more interaction here?
I don't. I think one side has to cave on this. I think one side has to blink on this, and the Bengals don't blink very often, if at all. And the bottom line is over wording in a contract and trying to do something for the first time. And yes, if other teams have done it, okay, whatever. But you doing it for the first time and them completely balking at that option of it. You've wasted an offseason of getting this kid some reps. And I know I did a podcast with my friend Mike Petraglia on Monday. He said, I don't think it's a big deal. He's not taking reps. Well, yeah, it is a big deal. Maybe not a big deal for Trey Hendrickson to not be here. He's a veteran. He knows the ropes. But I'm watching Jerry Montgomery, the defensive line coach of the last couple of days. Literally, after almost every rep his linemen take, he's trying to coach them up on routes to go, how to handle this, how to handle that. You don't think that that's not important to get the reps physically for him to then teach you?
Beyond that, I know these guys are professionals. I know they're grown-ups and they're getting paid a lot of money. But Skinny, you know that feeling of it being the first day for anything, a new job, first day of school, whatever it is. There's a little bit of butterflies. You're trying to be like, am I in the right spot? Am I doing things the right way? The pace of it is a little like, oh man, I'm trying to keep up here. I don't know everything. I don't know the next step for each thing like all these other guys do. When you're behind and you step in, you're just trying to catch up initially. You're not necessarily catching everything that people are trying to teach you. You're not picking up on all the details because you're simply trying to acclimate yourself. That's what the past few weeks have been about, is that acclimation point. Now he's going to be doing that when everyone else is trying to hit the ground running and being on point, preparing for the season. And that may sound small. It may sound insignificant. But when you're a rookie and you're, again, potentially being in a really important position for this team, given their lack of depth at the edge, it just feels like the wrong route for the Bengals to be going down this offseason.
And especially when you're a guy who was drafted more on traits, obviously, than production, right? Right. You see the traits. We can coach him up into production. Well, you ain't coached him up yet.
You need him on the field to be able to coach him. And again, if this was something that was out of your control, it'd be a different story. But it's such an easy solution. You can fix it with the snap of your fingers, and it really doesn't cost you anything. It's the exact same contract you've always given out to rookies. There's no fight over how much money you're paying him. I really do not understand this one at all.
And I will remind people, Demetrius Knight has not signed his contract yet either. Now, he did sign a waiver that allowed him to practice. Shemar chose not to do that. You could argue that maybe that was the wrong route for him to take. Travis Hunter's not signed yet. He's practicing. There's a couple other rookies who haven't signed, and yet they signed the waiver to practice. But, if he feels like, hey, if you're going to dicker over this, the second let's just say I blow my knee out on the second day of minicamp, are you going to eventually honor that contract? Maybe you don't. Maybe you say, hey, damaged goods, we're already going to lose a year out of him. What the hell? So I get it. I do. I really do.
Do you think maybe the Bengals specifically, or NFL teams in general, need to think more about the agents of the players that they're selecting when they're drafting?
Possibly. I think that's a lot of deep diving you'd have to do, though, right? I mean, I don't even know how deep you could get into that dive of.
But a lot of these agents are known. I mean, it's not like you have tons of new agents every year, right? A lot of them are the same guys that are doing. You get a feel for who the ones that will work with you are, and who the ones that are going to create drama and not sign contracts and stuff like that. I mean, it does, to your point, like guys like Travis Hunter are pretty big names that are out there practicing without the contract signed. It's a little bit surprising that Shemar Stewart maybe isn't doing that.
Yeah, and I get that part of it too, but I also get, you've only got certain leverage points, and he feels like my leverage point is to sit until you cave to my demands.
Yeah, I don't blame him for that, but I do think it's probably agent driven to some extent. Sure. This decision,
no question, no question. But again, they turned this into even higher drama. And Zach tried to deflect it as best he could when he talked to us today, and I get it. I mean, he's between a rock and a hard place with this. This isn't his decision; it's management's decision, and he has to suffer the consequences of that.
Which he's always doing. It feels like every offseason, it feels like we're talking about that.
Correct. No, that's exactly right. And it creates needless drama that's got a real chance to dive into training camp. And Zach said today, these are more distractions you guys think are. It's not that way inside the locker room. Well, it is. I mean, it just is. And come training camp, and you don't have these guys practicing, that's going to cause drama every single solitary day they don't go.
Yep. What did you guys get out of Joe Burrow's media appearance earlier this week?
I just not much for me. I mean, I honestly, there was a couple of us that even said, "Do we even need to talk to Joe again?" We just talked to him last week. He's been engaging in the ones he's done this off season, but yeah, I didn't get much out of what he said.
Jermaine Pratt was finally released. Why now? Why did it finally come down? Here's
my answer. I mean, this is the one. I don't know why this pisses me off so much. This has me more upset than the Shemar Stewart contract situation, the Anderson situation. What they did to Jermaine Pratt, I think, is just an absolute farce. You knew back in February you weren't going to have Jermaine Pratt in your plans. You knew in March when the free agency period came, when you signed Oren Burks, that Jermaine Pratt was out of your plans. You further knew, if you wanted to say, okay, well, maybe it was okay that they waited after the draft. All right, I'll give you that. But after the draft, when you drafted 2 linebackers in rounds 2 and 4, you clearly did not have Jermaine Pratt in your plans. And yet you let him flap in the wind until basically the offseason was over before waiting. That to me, I think they did him dirty, and shame on them for that. Listen, again, he didn't have a very good year last year. Even though he led the team in tackles, he really didn't. He looked a step slow. He looked like a guy that probably time to move out from under, not have to pay $6 million in 2025. I don't disagree with the decision on letting go Jermaine Pratt. I think it was the right decision to make, but that was always going to be the decision. And yet you did a guy like that who was a team captain, who was nothing but a professional, who the coaching staff loved because of how intelligent he was football-wise and doing all the right things and being a pro. And you do that guy like that, shame on you guys. Shame on you.
Based on that reaction, I assume there hasn't been any even rumblings of why they might have done this or why it took this long. That's the one thing. I wish they would just, if there is a reason that makes sense, a personnel reason, or there was something that made it more advantageous for them, or even it didn't matter as much for him when it happened, they should just make that known, because right now the optics are bad.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can fathom is the small fear that Demetrius Knight doesn't sign his contract and you needed Jermaine around. But if that's the case, he still hasn't signed it, and then you still went ahead and whacked him. I mean, again, if that was the reasoning, that doesn't completely jibe either for me because
do you think there's any possibility that they have come to terms with Demetrius Knight? We just haven't heard about it yet. Is that what that means?
No. I think you'd have heard he signed. Period. End of story.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't fully understand. I don't. I just the whole thing just smacks as bad form in my opinion. I mean, did you think you're going to hold out and a team was going to be desperate enough to give you a 7th round pick for him? Listen, when the Bengals dealt Joe Mixon, Joe still had some real value, right? He did, even though the Bengals were going to release him, and rightfully so, because the contract had gotten to the point where it didn't equal the production, but Joe still had some life in him, and the best you got for that dude was a 7th. I mean, what did you think you were getting for Jermaine Pratt?
Seriously. Especially in a situation where everyone knew you were going to release him.
Right.
You had to release him.
Yeah, he tried to save face with the whole demanding a trade because he knew, well, at least if I ask for a trade, maybe they'll try to swing one for me because they're gonna let me go, and they eventually did.
Yeah. Anything else on the Bengals front, Skinny?
No, I think it was interesting that they changed they released the training camp schedule for this year, and they've changed from afternoon practices to morning practices, and it's a slight change, right? I mean, you get a little bit out of the heat of the day. I think it's also a nod from Zach Taylor of, listen, I'm trying to do some different things. And obviously he brought this up too about the slow starts. I'm trying to do some different things to avoid those slow starts. And there have been, I brought these up a billion times, mitigating circumstances for the slow starts. But okay, I think this is him nodding and going, let's try some different things. Let's change things up in a couple areas. Maybe even that makes things fresh for guys who are going, gosh, another 2 to 4 practice again this year. Every year for 3 days in a row, and again, good for him for at least trying to do something different.
I thought of a crazy idea. Has he tried going to the front office and trying to get their rookie edge rusher signed in camp?
It's funny. We sit there and watch every once in a while. Zach will be talking to one of the front office members, and it's like, I wonder what this conversation is like today. Is this him begging to get the guy signed?
Hey, I see Jamal. Where's Shemar?
Where's Shemar? We need Shemar because we got Jamal.
All right, let's switch gears here to the Reds. They actually won 5 out of 6 since we last talked. They were on a 5-game winning streak until yesterday when they lost on getaway day. They are off today. They're a game over 500 now at 35-34 and in 4th place of the NL Central, 6.5 games back of the Cubs. It was funny, Skinny, because last week we talked about how similar it felt to last season, and I mentioned that when we were doing last week's show, they had just been on a winning streak the year prior around that same time. And I said, it feels so much like last year that even if they win several games over the course of the next week, like, I'm not going to get excited about it because we know how this story ends. Well, lo and behold, they go and win several games over the course of the next week. Have you changed your tune at all in the course of the last week? Did this winning streak spark any enthusiasm in you?
No, but because I need to see it over a longer period of time. But I do think you see the potential of a healthy CES, right? And get Austin Hayes back, and suddenly the middle of your lineup is a lot more formidable, which then lengthens your lineup out for guys that you're batting 5th and 6th and 4th by default before that, get slid down the order where they probably slot better. I do find that at least encouraging. But again, I need it for more than a 3-game stretch or a 5-game stretch. We need to see this for a multiple game stretch, multiple week stretch before you can sign off and go, okay, I see some things turning around. I prove me wrong, and then we'll go from there.
I think CES's return is probably the most encouraging part of all this.
Yeah.
If you're trying to look for something to latch on to, the idea that this lineup could get more dynamic, more potent in the middle of that order, have a little more fear, that's what you latch onto, I think, is the fact that CES and Austin Hayes maybe could give you some of that again.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah. Anything else? I mean, you had the Battle of Dolo outing. I don't think you take much away from that. Abbott was outstanding in his complete game.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, that was out. That was. I was actually doing public address for an all-star softball game that night, and I would look at my phone every once in a while to see the score, and I saw it was 1-0 in the ninth, and I literally scrolled in the box score real quick. I'm going. I was looking to see, okay, who's pitched in relief and who's closing, and lo and behold, I see Andrew Abbott 8 2/3 innings at that point with 1 out to go. I thought, wow, are they going to actually let him finish? And they did. 117 pitches worth, and they let him finish.
how surprised were you in this era that they let a guy, because it wasn't like he didn't run into any trouble. There were a couple situations where it's like, okay, here it is, get him out of here now. And they didn't do that. It's so rare to see that in this day and age where a guy gets over 90 pitches and they let him pitch through trouble.
Yeah, very surprising. Now, Terry Francona is kind of old school, right? And he even said, I felt like he deserved a chance to try to finish it, and he gave him that chance. I guess the litmus test, right, is will this affect the next couple of starts moving forward? I mean, 117 pitches is not a ton by baseball standards, but hell, it feels like every team cuts guys off at 90 to 95 pitches these days, so it does seem like it's a ton. So we'll see how it affects him over the next couple of starts. But, man, I say this with full knowledge of watching some of Hunter Green's starts right there. He's our best pitcher. It's crazy.
Right now, it feels that way. I mean, I think Green, obviously, over the long haul of the season, no doubt has been. But Abbott looks fantastic right now. So, but again, the starting pitching has not been my concern this year.
Right. And the bullpen's gotten better. So now you feel like you got some pieces in the lineup, and okay, it's kind of go time. Let's see if you can string together, some good baseball here and get yourself back into playoff hunt.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears here to some college basketball talk, Skinny. We've gotten through the transfer portal. We're kind of in this lull. Teams are now starting to, they've arrived on campus usually in the first week of June or right before then. They've gotten into summer workouts, or they're just starting summer workouts maybe this week. It looks like all of the local teams have gotten underway here. So I thought maybe it'd be a good time to sort of look back at everyone's roster now the transfer portal settled, kind of talk about who, it's a guess at this point, obviously nothing is set in stone, but who might be the starting five for each group, kind of the first couple guys on the depth chart off of the bench, and just go through what we think of these teams that they've put together. We'll start with Cincinnati. Jizzle James is back. They've added Sincere Harris from West Virginia, who I think has a good chance to start in the backcourt. Sean Abayev is their 5-star incoming freshman, who I think another guy has a good chance to start on the wing there. Then Baba Miller from Florida Atlantic and Mustafa Sham from Central Florida seem like both locks to start in the front court, I would think. Coming off the bench, Kirk Kriisa, you got the transfer from Kentucky. Day Thomas is back. Jalen Celestine from Baylor, and Jalen Haynes from George Mason, the big man who's like 6'8", 260, wide body down low. Give me some initial thoughts now that the smoke has cleared here on the transfer portal on Cincy's roster.
Well, he didn't average a ton, but it was double figures. I think you've at least got a post threat in Sham, right? He can shoot a little bit of the three. I don't think you want him doing it a ton. He's not overly great at it, but I just think he gives you a much better option than what you had in Aziz Bandega. I mean, Aziz Bandega literally couldn't do anything other than tip dunk the basketball. I mean, that's basically all he could do. I think Sham can get you something of an inside presence. I'll be interested to see, does he go multiple guard lineups, right? Like Day Jizzle, Celestine or Harris, and then play Abayev and Sham as the only two bigs. I do think he's got Wes Miller's got a lot of different ways he can go with this thing. My question goes back to this. And I'm not putting Sean Abayev there yet, even though he's a 5-star McDonald's All-American guy. Give me an NBA player on that roster.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, like Jizzle James is going to have pro prospects. Mustafa Sham is going to have pro prospects. I'm sure Baba Miller believes at 6'11" and skilled that he's a pro prospect. Sean Abayev is another name. I don't think there's a surefire NBA guy in that group.
Yeah, and in that league, it feels like you better have a surefire NBA dude on your roster, right?
Well, and
I think it's better, but listen, it's felt. I thought last year's roster additions initially were pretty good. Like I thought Dylan Mitchell was a really good roster addition, and it still turned out they didn't have enough dudes to score.
And to that point, I'm not a big identity guy. We've gone back and forth about that before, about whether you need an identity or not. But I do think the thing that we've seen with Cincinnati's teams the last few years, we keep thinking, oh, this is a better roster than the year before. Right. But then you get into it, and it's just kind of a collection of athletic pieces. You don't really have a clear way that the points are going to come. And when you look at this roster, unless Sean Abayev is just really a dominant offensive player, I'm a little bit worried about that same thing. Not that you don't have good pieces, not that I don't like the collection of talent. I mean, I'm hearing they spent over $12 million, maybe more than that on this roster. So it seems like they definitely went out and spent money and got some talented guys. But just talking about that starting lineup, and that might not be accurate. Maybe Kirk Kriisa is in there because you need some more shooting, but I don't think he's like a go-to offensive piece. I do just wonder, what is the clear way, the clear path to scoring for this Cincinnati team on the offensive end, which has seemed to be the biggest issue for Wes Miller over the last few years.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, just from a sheer watching what they do offensively, I'm not sure I have great belief he's going to X and O his way into better offensive stuff. Maybe he does. Maybe he's got somebody that he's bringing on staff that will help in that regard. Because, when I watch them, I literally to myself as a coach go, what are you trying to do? What is it that you're trying to do other than get Jizzle James a mid-range jump shot?
Yeah, and I think that's where you lose the benefit of the doubt at this point,
right,
if you're Wes Miller. Last year, I think this was a different conversation with us. We looked at the guys he brought in, the Dylan Mitchell ad. You knew you had Aziz Bandego for a full year, and we're thinking, okay, this team has some potential. It does look like a more talented group.
Connor Hickman was going to help you shooting-wise.
Right, and you can say the same thing about this group of like more talent, some more athleticism at certain positions. I like this team better. This roster looks better on paper, but Wes has lost that benefit of the doubt from me. He's going to have to show it. And so I think this team has a chance to be better than last year. But what does better than last year mean in the Big 12? I don't know this is a top half of the Big 12 roster.
And it doesn't have to be to make the tournament, right? I mean,
that's right.
Just don't finish in the bottom quarter of it. So that part is the good part of being in the Big 12 to a degree, is you don't have to be in the upper half of it. You just need to be around the middle part of it, and you'll probably do enough on your resume to make the tournament.
And I think this group can do that, but I also think they need Wes Miller to do a really good job. He needs to do better than he's done with the last few groups.
Yep.
Let's move on to Xavier. They added... Well, this is a little bit tough at the point guard position. You have Roddy Anderson, who's the incumbent guy, the red shirt from last year. You also have the addition of All Right from Valparaiso. Let's say All Right is the starter at point guard. He's going to be a sophomore. Then you got Malik Messina Moore transferring in from Montana on the wing. Gabriel Pizzotto transferring in from Evansville on the wing, small forward spot. Trey Carroll transfer from Florida Atlantic at the power forward spot. And then Anthony Robinson, 6'10", 252, transfer from Virginia. He's another guy that's making that freshman to sophomore year jump. I like those guys as the starting five. Then I mentioned Roddy Anderson could potentially be that starting point guard, or if not, probably the first guy off the bench. Pop Njai, a 7-footer from UNLV, off the bench as a backup shot-blocking big man. And Philip Borovichinen, a guy who started a lot of games last year for Richard Pitino at New Mexico. He's a 6'9", kind of do-it-all wing, but not a big offensive piece, just kind of a role player that can take up some minutes. I imagine he'll play a decent role for this team as well, since they brought him over. This is a tough group to assess, Skinny, when you have to replace an entire roster in the transfer portal in a year where the market was crazy, the spending was crazy, and Xavier didn't have as many resources as a lot of those other schools did. What is your initial take on this Xavier roster?
I mean, he tried to corner the market on 6'10", 6'9", 6'10", 6'11 guys, it feels like. I mean, again, we'll go back to the identity piece. I mean, is this going to be a team that's going to just have to play very slow and going to have to just protect the rim and win games 62-60 and win it with offensive rebounding? Who gets you some buckets? It's impossible to assess. I'd like to know what the role of Brad Colbert will be this year. I mean, he's going to play a part, right?
He is gone. He has exhausted his eligibility.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh man. No, I think it's a really hard, because you're obviously way closer to it than I'm even remotely close to. I'm just trying to figure out what he was trying to do from a roster standpoint here, and what he was trying to put together, or is he just trying to get as many Division I level players as he could with the amount of money he could, and see what the amalgamation became into? Because I don't know if there was a roster building concept here.
I think two things that I see, and it's kind of the opposite of what you said about needing to slow it down. I think they're going to try to get more athletic, and they're going to try to be up and down, defend you, run and block shots. Like, their big men are movers. They're not big-bodied, stiff guys. They're guys that can run rim to rim, dunk, play above the rim, and block shots. And I think that's what they're trying to get out of that centerpiece, is guys that are very mobile and athletic and can run the floor and play in this up-tempo style. I don't think they have enough skill and shooting and offensive firepower to play in the half court and execute a bunch and like run a bunch of sets and score out of that. I think it's going to be hustle points, get out in transition, and then you hope. The biggest key for Richard Pitino and his staff, I think, this year is you brought in 5 guys who are going to be sophomores, going from freshman to sophomore year. two of those guys, at least, if not three of them, you need to hit on.
Absolutely.
Because if you get two or three that look like pretty good players and you can try to keep them and you have some continuity going into your second year where maybe the market's a little bit more normal and you have a little bit more to spend, then maybe you're cooking with something. But this year's group, man, I think they did everything they could to put together something that they think will be competitive and also give them a chance for stability going forward. I think it'd be hard to see this group going anything above middle of the Big East, but I think they're definitely a lower half of the Big East team this year.
Yeah, before we go to Kentucky, I do want to ask you, with the House settlement finally coming to fruition, will this help Big East teams because they can devote more money to basketball, or will, again, be dependent on, well, yeah, we may have some more money, but we can't get up to the $20 million cap to spend, for example?
No, I think it actually does help the Big East teams, at least initially, because everyone feels that as soon as the SEC and Big Ten teams get their arms around it and see what the disadvantages are for them, they'll just change the rules again to make sure that they're not at a disadvantage. But initially, the way this is set up, I do think the new clearinghouse, and like, people are all caught up on whether that clearinghouse that is going to oversee NIL deals now, they're worried about the fair market value point of that, like whether they'll limit the actual money that's being spent on NIL deals. I don't care about that as much. What I'm more interested in is in the past, the last few years, if you were a big donor, let's just use Calipari and the Tyson chicken guy. Sure. I could just say, hey, Cal, here's $5 million into a pot, a nebulous pot. You can spend however you want. It just goes wherever. Now, if I'm the Tyson chicken guy and I want to spend on your players,
I have to prove.
Well, you have to give me a player. I have to do an advertisement with him, which, by the way, whole lot of time spent setting that up, a whole lot of just stuff on the back end where you have to, like, this is an actual deal. We're paying him this amount for this advertisement that he's doing. And whether they let you spend $1 million on that advertisement or not, now that player is representing your company. So if you're Tyson Chicken, I don't know if I just want you giving that money to anybody. I maybe now want it to be specific guys that I feel comfortable about. And I think it just slows down the NIL piece some. And we already know when it comes to the revenue share part, those football schools are going to be getting like $4 to $6 million, a lot of them, because the football is taking the rest of that.
No, that's right. That's exactly right.
So from that standpoint, I do think, I know that's long-winded, but I do think initially the Big East teams are at an advantage because Xavier's not sharing it with anyone, and their money's basically coming from the same place that it's always been. It's not going to be revenue share. It's going to be donors getting them up to that 5.5, 6+ million, which is around, I think, where they were this year of NIL money, and that's how they'll try to do it going forward. So I don't think Xavier's going to be at the top of the Big East ever in terms of their spending, but I do think they can get into, the top 4 or 5. So
and we're getting kind of in the weeds here, but it does fascinate me a little bit. The initial thing for name, image, and likeness was designed to basically, if I want my advertising out there and to tie it around a player, that's what it was initially. Yes. The spirit of it was, correct?
Yes, and I'm all for that. I think you should act like. Right.
So how did it get derailed into just the collectives, for lack of a better term?
Because there were just no guardrails in place to keep it from happening. They wanted to not be pay for play, but that's immediately what it became with the collective. It was just a pot of money. You come here and we give you it. And at some point we might ask you to make like an Instagram post for whatever, but there was never any actual deals going on in terms of these players were earning it. If you do put that in place, I'm fine with it. Like, if these guys are going out and they're shooting a commercial for the local car dealership, pay them $20 million for that if you want. If you're the car dealership and you can afford it, I'm fine with that. I just don't like the pot of money sitting in these nebulous accounts that's being spent however they want.
Right. And that's where I've always been of the ilk that NIL was going to dry up at some point, because at some point, if you don't feel like you're getting rate of return on the investment that you've made in that player to do your commercial work, then you're going to go, well, I'm not doing this anymore. And maybe it still does. I don't know. But when you can just say, as a donor, I'm just throwing it in the pot. Go do it. I don't have to worry about return on investment. I just care that I put the money in the pot to help the program.
Well, the one thing I have heard a little bit at some of these bigger schools, you have the NIL guys who have been given a lot of money the last several years, and now they've heard, okay, the rules have changed. The schools are going to be paying now. I've heard of some of those, and a lot of your big donors are still going to give you cash, but a lot of those NIL guys who have been forking over some extra money recently are going, okay, good. It's about time. It's on you guys now. I'm done with this. I've carried you long enough. So I don't know that there's all going to be the same spending that there's been in terms of the straight up NIL.
And then the trickle down effect, like Tennessee has literally told its fan base, we're going to have to raise ticket prices because we have to pay this stuff. And I think Virginia Tech has told the students we're raising our student fees because we're having to pay these things. At what point then does that start to have the trickle down effect? Like fans going, I'm not going to pay that ticket price to go to your game. To hell with that.
Skinny, in every major Division I athletics department right now, at least with the fundraising people, they have already started talking about what is our valuation when the Saudis come and ask. Like, are we 150 million? Are we 250 million? Like, what is our valuation? Because it's all going to be separate entities, private equity. It's coming sooner than we think. I think potentially within the next 5 years, we're like actually down that path where athletic departments are just a separate business for these schools.
Unbelievable.
All right, Kentucky. We haven't talked about Kentucky yet, right? Let's get in the Wildcats. Jalen Lowe, the point guard from Pitt that transferred him. Denzel Aberdeen, the shooting guard from Florida, wing from Florida. They've got Otega Oweh back, which is the big piece.
Huge.
Mo Diabate from Alabama. And then maybe Brandon Garrison at the center spot as a starting five we'll go with for now. You look at the bench, you've got, this is where it gets really unclear, I think. You got a bunch of guys like Colin Chandler, I think Jaden Quaitnance, who knows when exactly he's going to be fully healthy.
And let's just say that he gets healthy in January, whatever time it is to ramp him up. He might be your best player when it's all said and done. He's certainly the best NBA prospect.
Yeah, he's the most talented player, I think, on the roster, but it just kind of uncertain right now because he has that knee injury. Jasper Johnson, the really talented freshman that's coming in.
Malachi Moreno.
Cam Williams, the guy from Tulane, who's kind of a role player, versatile defender guy. I don't love the bench in terms of talent. I don't see like a clear star there, but you got a lot of pieces that might be good.
Yeah, I think it's a really good. I think it's a better roster than last year. I think it's going to be better defensively. You know, could you argue they maybe won't shoot it as well because you lost to Kobe Brea, and maybe there were times Kobe Brea disappeared in games too. It wasn't a matter of him not making shots. It was a matter of him not taking shots in certain games. The guy that fascinates me, because I really thought he came on leaps and bounds towards the end and looked completely lost in the beginning, and maybe rightfully so, was Colin Chandler.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times I'd see him in games go, get him out. He can't play at this level. He can't. And maybe literally it was he's on a 2-year Mormon mission and needed some time to ramp himself back up. He's still, it's probably a bigger ass than we can imagine. And it just looked like as the year went on, he ramped it up pretty quickly. I think he's a real interesting piece because I just talked about, I don't know if they have as good as shooting as last year. Maybe they do. Maybe a guy like Colin Chandler gives you that.
Yeah, it does feel like they're going to be relying on some of these efficiency guys that maybe aren't high volume, maybe aren't go-to pieces, but to get some of that offense and that skill, the scoring, the shooting, they're going to need some guys to do it in a role. It's not going to be like they're done, because Otega Oweh is going to be the go-to offensive piece. There's no doubt about that. And
I thought as the season progressed, he evolved into that role pretty well.
He was awesome.
He took over some games. And I don't want to say won him single-handedly. That's never fair, but really just kind of carried the offense single-handedly at times.
If they didn't have him returning, I'd be really worried about this roster.
I still think it's an NCAA tournament roster at that, but getting him back, I think it's a Final Four caliber roster.
Oh, man. I need to see more offensively from this group before I'm going to believe they're Final Four good. But I mean, every team in the country has so many unknowns in this day and age that you can say that about almost anyone.
I mean, I think a guy like Jalen Lowe is going to benefit from playing with better players. Like he had to do everything for Pitt last year, and some of his numbers reflect that. The shooting percentage isn't all that great. The assisted turnovers aren't all that great, but he's really skilled. He put up numbers. And again, he kind of had to do it on a bad team because he didn't have a lot of good parts around him. Now he's got good parts around him.
But don't you think it's a little weird? Like when Kentucky got Mark Pope as their head coach, my thought was, okay, we're going to see a different looking Kentucky group, maybe not as athletic, maybe not as talented, but very skilled, 3-point shooting, lots of offense. And now I feel like in back-to-back years, my biggest concern or question about the Kentucky roster is like, is there enough skill shooting and offense on the team, which is kind of surprising. Like, I feel like this team is better athletically and defensively than last year's group, but I worry about the offense. Yeah,
fair. I guess, I think we're probably discounting a couple of the freshmen too, because I think Malachi Moreno can play. I think he played really well in that system. And I mean, Jasper Johnson, he can shoot it too. So,
yeah. They're going to need something out of those guys, I think.
And I'm not selling Trent Noah short either. I know he didn't get a ton of run last year, but I do think there's a skill set there that he can help this team.
All right, Northern Kentucky. I've got probably the only place in the world that you will get a starting 5 prediction for the Norse on June 12th. But I'm ready. I'm more locked in on this one than any of them right now.
Fire when ready, Ridley.
Ethan Elliott, the Australian, whatever he's going to be, not quite a freshman, not quite a transfer. The Australian point guard that bring in, I have him starting at the 1. I haven't seen him yet, but I have
Elliott's kid. Yeah, I've heard of him.
Old Man Elliott's boy from the Outback. Dan Goretzka returning at shooting guard.
Him I know.
And Sean Nelson, Division II transfer. I like it. Starting in the backcourt, just a big 6'4", 5 athletic body, experienced guy, very mature. Then Cale Robinson starting at the power forward spot, another Division II transfer. LJ Wells returning at the center spot. Then off the bench, here's a name to keep an eye on. Donovan O'Day from Cal State Fullerton. He's the one Division I transfer that they've added. First couple of days of workouts, really athletic. He's going to get fouled a lot.
How big?
6'1", 6'2"-ish maybe. I think he can really defend in their matchup zone, get some steals and deflections. So keep an eye on him. I could see him ending up as a starter. Then a couple of other names to keep an eye on. Tate Dozier, local guy, was in Louisville, played at Georgetown College, NAIA transfer, very athletic. Addison Archer, another very athletic, thin forward from the JUCO ranks, good rebounder and maybe shot blocker, dunker type. And then they've got another foreign guy who is not here yet, but he's coming over from Spain, Juanma Ruiz, a very mobile big man. He's like 6'9", thin, rebounder, rim runner type. So we'll see what he brings when he gets here. But that's what we've got for the Norse.
So I guess the other question I would ask you is what have they found out about Sam Vincent, if anything?
He has been denied multiple times now. The initial thing was denied. They appealed it. It was denied. It sounds like we're kind of set on the idea that Sam will not be back with NKU, but I don't think they've completely given up there. I think they've gone sort of another legal route, looking at what else can we do here to make sure, because it just doesn't make sense that all these guys are playing 5th, 6 years, and he's basically being denied on like 1 or 2 games worth of, he's 1 or 2 games over the limit for being eligible, basically.
The other one I haven't seen is I'm drawing a complete blank on the kid's name from Tennessee that's suing for extra eligibility. It's a guy Ziegler.
Ziegler, yeah.
Yeah. That has not been ruled either way yet, has it?
I have not seen a final ruling come down on that. Yeah, and I don't, I don't have a lot of optimism that Sam's situation is going to play out. So if I'm an NKU fan, I'm basically set on the idea that this is the roster at this point. But man, if they were able to add Sam Vincent, and not just like, look, Sam Vincent was on the team last year, but I don't think he was himself for most of the year. I think he was still trying to get back and get over that. If you get him a full year out from that knee surgery, you might have a different Sam Vincent than you had last season. That would be a crazy late addition for this roster. But even without it, I think getting Dan Goretzka and LJ Wells back was huge, because you can look at it as like, yeah, they had to bring in 9 new pieces or whatever it is. But like in the Horizon League, if you bring 2 starting caliber players back, that's a lot.
It is, no question.
So, all right. Any final thoughts on the college basketball segment here, Skinny? Just wanted to kind of touch on some of those teams after the transfer portal.
So you just going through all those rosters exhausted me a little bit. Like there's so many moving new people. I can't imagine. And again, I'm not going to ask you to feel sorry for guys making millions of dollars coaching basketball, a game they love. But you made me exhausted in that whatever 10 to 12 minute window we just did that. I can't imagine how exhausting it is to do that and then realize I'm going to have to do that again next year.
Yeah, and then the people I really feel bad for, Skinny, are the guys like myself who cover this stuff. I mean, imagine not being at like even a Xavier, but being at like one of those schools where you're making $28,000 a year to cover their recruiting, and you're just starting out, and you've got to do a transfer portal every single year with a whole new roster.
I can imagine it.
It went from being a pretty fun job to being like, what am I doing with my life?
Oh, dude, when I covered the University of Kentucky, I would make recruiting calls during recruiting season, right, to coaches and contacts and sources. That was exhausting enough, but you knew there was a finite beginning and end, and it was only a handful of players. It wasn't like tentacles reaching out 9 billion directions and names being tossed around, and it's exhausting.
It is, but the only good thing about the transfer portal compared to the high school stuff is there is the beginning and end. Like It's just a month and a half, 2 months worth of it, and then it's kind of over, which makes it nice. So. No, I actually kind of enjoy the transfer portal in a weird, sick way, believe it or not.
You're a weird, sick man, yes.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some Ask Skinny Anything. We got a couple questions here. First of all, your thoughts on the NBA Finals now that the Pacers are up 2-1. Mr.
OKC in
Thunder
5,
in 5.
baby.
Yeah, OKC
I
in
was
5.
Mr. OKC in 5. The Pacers are a great sum of their parts. I mean, they just are. I mean, you look at that roster individually, and nobody pops off the page, right? They just don't. But they are just a great amalgamation of their parts. They play great together, and I do think OKC matches them from a depth perspective, but they do utilize that depth to kind of wear you down a little bit.
Yeah, and Halliburton doesn't get enough credit for
No, I give you that. You're right.
being a star.
But he's the guy though that
He defers.
He defers, and in like game 2, what do you have? 3 points, I think.
Yeah, and that's the problem. He's willing to be just like the sort of role guy on certain nights where, hey, it's not my night. Like, I'm not going to shoot through this. I'm just going to play as like a role guy tonight. And people don't like that with superstars.
I heard a guy today. He's an ESPN Analytics NBA guy, and he made a great point. He's like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should have been the MVP of the league. He played like it. He said, but he plays like all-star caliber SGA on the road, averaging, and this sounds like averaging only 24 points a game, but you put that in comparison to him averaging like roughly 35 points a game at home. I think that's a big difference. I don't know why that would be, why that is, how that is. And they need him to play at that level a lot of times to carry their offense.
That's the thing that, I mean, don't get me wrong. I still think OKC is probably the better team, probably going to win this series, whatever. They deserve to be.
I would tell you this. They better win this next game than go home and take care of business. If you go back to Indiana down 3-2 for game 6 and the way that building will be, I don't think they survive that to a game 7.
Yeah. And look, I wasn't like out here last week being like, oh, the Pacers are going to win or anything like that. So I'm not trying to do I predicted this, but I did think that like when everyone was talking about the Thunder being such a heavy favorite last week, that they were way overlooking the fact that they are over reliant on SGA, and the Thunder aren't nearly as talented as people make them out to be. Like it's a very good team.
Right, but they've been really elite defensively, and they haven't been in stretches of this series. And maybe that's a credit to Indiana's offense.
Yeah, I mean, defense is great, but whenever people talk about how great you are defensively, it means you're ripe for the picking.
Yeah,
when you get to the NBA Finals.
And the other thing I don't get, part of playoff basketball is adjustments, right? Because you're playing each other possibly 7 times, and you've seen everything they've done. They've seen everything, so you got to have some adjustment. I don't understand them adjusting when the playoffs, when this series started, by taking out the 2 big lineup.
I just don't think they feel like that works against them.
The analytics guy today was saying you put them on the floor together, the numbers will back up and support that they're a better team when those two are on the floor together, when Holmgren and Hartenstein are on the floor together.
It feels like it's been that way all year. I don't know. You're right. I don't know why they went away to it, but I'm guessing they feel like the matchups with the Pacers don't work.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they felt like, hey, Pacers are going to try to shoot some threes, lengthen us out. We need to have a little bit more foot quickness on the floor. But again, I think I'd stick with my own analytics going in and say, okay, if they expose the 2 big lineup, then I'll adjust. I'm not going to adjust to that. He made it. This guy was really good. I can't even remember his name, but he's really good. He said, maybe they thought after game, because they went with that same lineup last night, the smaller lineup to start, that, listen, we should be up 2-0. Basically they won on a last second impossible buzzer beater. And so it did work. We just lost. We just happened to lose. Then we showed in game 2 that it worked. And so we're good. Well, it didn't work in game 3. And now, is that maybe the adjustment they make is go back to the 2 big lineup? Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see, because I do think that makes them better offensively when they have the 2 bigs out there.
I agree. Cason Wallace is not a great offensive player.
Right, but I do get the concerns about matching up,
sure,
your mobility. But we'll see what happens there. It's just been, I don't think the Thunder were the team that everyone made them out to be like a week and a half ago. I think that's played itself out.
I guess because, and maybe that's shame on me too, the West has always felt like the better of the conferences, right? And they kind of made mincemeat of it.
Yeah, but this year, the reason we have a Thunder and Pacers finals is because it was a down year. I think we had, we didn't quite have the same firepower that we normally do. Well, teams were banged up or what have you. So the
other thing, and SGA is certainly a superstar, but are the days of remember it was like get 3 superstars and whatever other role players you're finding, that instead it's more. It's nice to have a superstar, right? And Tyrese Halliburton is an all-star caliber player. It's nice to have that, but maybe it is roster building and figuring out how the pieces fit together, and that you are the sum of your parts. That's again, the Knicks have 2 great players, right? Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, 2 great players. They didn't have much depth, right? And I know Tibbs was always knocked for not going to his bench. He didn't have a bench to go to.
Well, we're seeing there's been a lot of conversation around that exact topic because there have been some rule changes within the last several years that have changed how you build a roster. And it's more difficult now to have like three bona fide superstars on the same roster. And so you are seeing them take a more creative approach. And I think building by in depth with numbers as opposed to just getting the concentrated talent within a couple of guys. And I think that's going to continue. And I think you're also going to see teams continue to play different styles of ball. We've seen everyone over the last 5-6 years, whatever, get into the like 3-pointer or die. It's just nothing but space and fire up a bunch of threes from every position. It feels like this year we've seen a few more different styles of play on the offensive end where teams have started to mix it back up. I've been saying for a few years now, I think if you decide we're going to go bully ball, play with a couple of big ass monsters in the post and play through them, I think you'll have an advantage because no one is built to defend that right now.
And we'll have to adjust back to that. And no, you're right.
So it's always cyclical with that stuff. And I think we're starting to see a change in the league again right now. And I'm kind of excited about that because as much as I believe in the analytics of 3-point shooting and it's amazing to watch Steph Curry and all that, it got a little boring with every game just becoming a 3-point shooting contest. And there's no in between, no dunking, nothing anymore.
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Just from an artistic standpoint, I don't need to watch a horse contest. If I want to watch a horse contest, let's just go play horse.
It was fun though. Like, I don't know if you watched the Cavs much this year, but they were like running a totally different offense. A lot more like cutting, backdoor cutting, not near as much ball screen stuff. It was interesting to watch them play as opposed to what we've seen in the NBA recently. And I think you're going to continue to see more of that.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. Who does Skinny have winning the U.S. Open this weekend?
I hated to do it, and this is on a Thursday. And when I just hopped in to do the podcast, he made a miraculous bogey, believe it or not, on a par 5. So he's one over as we're taping this. Is Bryson DeChambeau, the defending champ. I just think with his length on that course, he does hit some foul balls in that rough. I've watched a little bit of it today when I got back I watched it this morning before I went to Bengals practice and then was watching it after as I was writing some stuff before the podcast. I mean, you do put it in the rough, you're dead. And that's my only fear. I mean, he is a strong guy that can get it out of the rough, but the course right now it looked like it was receptive this morning, but they're talking about, I was listening to Michael Collins as I was driving in, the former caddy. He said, listen, he goes, it looks like there's might be a little bit of good scoring out there today. He goes, they are going to make that carnage on Friday. It is going to be a bloodbath. They're going to do things to that course because I guess there's some weather that's coming in this weekend of rain that's going to help soften the greens. That he said, you just watch what they do to this course on Friday because they know the weather's coming. So I love events like this because as opposed to it being birdie fests where somebody can get on a run and get the 15 under in 2 days and it's catch me if you can. I mean, this is going to be, you may have a 2-shot lead on going into Sunday and somebody 6 shots back who shoots maybe even only a 2-under score can come back and win it. I love events like this just because of the wild swings you can have in scores. I mean, Rory was floating along at 1 under. He hit a foul ball right before I got on here on a par 5. He was hitting his 5th from the fairway like 160 yards out just to get it on. And he got it on. I'm assuming from where he was, he made a double bogey because it was going to be a lengthy putt. I mean, I just love things like that where you have to be so precise that one mistake can get you on a hole.
Yeah, I also love golf analysis because it's like it's one of those sports where there's like different terminology, sort of like horse racing. If you're in the know, there's good terminology. Like the course was receptive. That's a great line right there that you would only use talking about golf.
The greens were receptive.
The greens were receptive. Rent an RV and drive around the country for 6 to 8 weeks. Yay or nay, Skinny?
Absolutely. A buddy of mine and I, he's retired. He grew up just down the street from me in Crestview Hills. We went to high school together, played ball together, but he works for American Airlines and he settled in Dallas, which is kind of their hub. And that's where he made his career. He's retired. We've talked about that, dude. We've talked about getting something like that and driving Route 66. I want to do that. I absolutely would love to do that.
So you're all in on it. All right.
All in on it. Yes.
Is there any other stops that you would, are there any like main stops that you have to hit along the way?
I'd like to. I want to just see what old Route 66 was like. I mean, that used to be a major thoroughfare in this country, going from Chicago to L.A. I want to just see what that's like.
Fair enough. I honestly kind of thought you were going to say hell no on this one.
No, because the thing is, I don't like driving long distance. Like I can still remember to this day, my wife and I. My dad had a Cadillac, and they had moved, but he couldn't get the car down there. He he and my mom took another car. So we were going to deadhead their car, then just fly back home. So we're driving, and we got past Atlanta, and we were going to stop, and I said, let's just keep going. I'll drive the rest of this, and we'll get to my mom and dad's around 7 or 8 in the morning, and I'll sleep then, and you'll be okay. I remember and they lived in the Clearwater. I remember I hit the Florida line and thought, okay, but I still knew I had a couple hours left to go. I'm thinking, I'm okay. About 10 minutes later, my head started drifting to the window as I'm driving. I am just I still don't know how I made it to this day. I'm not so sure if I didn't fall asleep in some spurts. It's possible I did. My wife was knocked out. She was fast asleep. I didn't have the heart to wake her up to say, hey, I might fall asleep in a minute. We might both just die. So I don't like that. But the thing about the RV is, if you want to drive 4 hours and make a stop, you might drive 4 hours and make a stop.
That's true.
Especially if you don't have anywhere it's not a finite time. Like I'm on vacation because I only got this much vacation. It's no, man, I'm retired. I'm hopping in the RV. If I want to go for an 8-hour stretch to go somewhere, I will. If I want to go for an hour and go, hey, let's make a stop here, we will.
You just pull over and go to sleep. Yep. Right there in the back. I don't know that I could be an RV guy.
I'm all in on that trip.
I've got a lot of years left before I got to make that decision. Though I feel like the time to do it is when you're retired.
Oh, absolutely.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
The thing is, I hear RVs are kind of like boats in that you get them and they're just everything breaks. It's just money pit, problem after problem. You can't keep them in order.
We took one. A friend of mine when I lived in Florence as a kid. His dad bought a motorhome, and my dad, our family borrowed it. It was my mom and dad, me. I was dating my wife at the time. My sister brought along a friend, and then my cousin, her husband, and young child who's now in her 30s. This was back in actually, she might even be pushing 40 now. Because this is 1982, because I remember the 1982 College World Series. We borrowed their RV from them or their motorhome from them and drove to Hilton Head. And I actually enjoyed that. I thought it was relaxing. It was comfortable. I got to drive a little bit of the trip. I will say my dad scared the daylights out of us driving through the nighttime in the Smoky Mountains. And it felt like every curve you hit, you'd be going like this in the back of that thing. That was a little dicey, but other than that, it was enjoyable.
I don't love the idea of driving through the mountains in one of those.
Yeah, that's probably a good call.
In Skinny's opinion, which distillery in Kentucky is the best to go visit?
I've never gone, and I
haven't either.
I've never gone. I've been to New Riff, obviously, for some part, which is local. I'd like to go to all of them. I mean, we had a relationship when I worked at Turfway Park with Maker's Mark, and they were fine people. They did some really nice promotional stuff with us, so I'm kind of partial to them a little bit. But I'm also for full disclosure, I'll drink Woodford Reserve on the rocks, but I'm a Kentucky Gentleman, which I think is I don't know if that's a Buffalo Trace or not. I'm a Kentucky Gentleman guy. This is going to sound so weak on my part, but for full disclosure, I'm a Kentucky Gentleman with a Sprite Zero mix guy.
Oh, I love it. I got a meme today.
It's a cheap bourbon. So if you're gonna drink a cheap bourbon, right,
you got to mix it.
You got to mix it. If I'm going to drink Woodford, I want to taste the Woodford, so I'm just going to put that over some ice and do that.
Yeah, which, by the way, I know bourbon connoisseurs will completely disagree with me here, but none of it tastes that. It all kind of bites. None of it tastes that great.
I think some of them do have a distinct taste to them.
Me too, and I like bourbon.
I'm not the bourbon snob of I was drinking for a while Benchmark number 8, which is actually literally a Buffalo Trace bourbon, and it's like a lot of things. Honestly, for a while, if I was drinking beer, I don't drink beer as much as I used to because I've kind of gone to more of a alcohol mixed drink kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I went through a phase of drinking Natural Light, and I'm like, this doesn't taste a whole lot different from Bud Light, which I used to drink. Now, I am a Heineken guy if I really go fully leaded, but if it's a light beer, I'm like, it's the same thing, just called something different, probably with a little extra water added to it. Fine.
I'm not at all trying to say there aren't differences. I can definitely there are distinct flavors and stuff, and I like some better than others, but none of them are that great. That's the one thing that when people act like there's such a significant difference to some of these bourbons, I'm like, I don't know.
And dude, listen, if you're going to do it, I can sip a bourbon, but if I'm going to go for the buzz, I'm just going to go for the cheap stuff and mix it and call it a day.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I saw a meme sort of along these lines, since we're talking about mixers and Sprite Zero. I saw a meme today that called a Coke Zero a fridge cigarette, and I've never related to anything more in my life.
That's hilarious. That's a good one.
Great piece of content. That's all we got.
All right, good stuff. Thanks so much. All right, we will be back next week. We have a 5-week Bengal break, but I got a feeling we won't have a break from Bengals news over the next 5 weeks with a couple of contract situations still holding up in the air. We'll get some Reds conversation and much, much more. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for the questions. For Rick Brewing, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly Potpourri edition, presented by Blake, the Attorney Maislin.